Top 10 surprisingly affordable classic muscle cars that still turn heads. With the 3rd gen Plymouth Barracuda hogging all the attention, people forget how cool the 2nd generation Barracuda is. It's also an extremely affordable muscle car that is going to get noticed on the street. Bring a Trailer recently sold a rust-free 1968 Barracuda with a 229 CI slant 6 and 4-speed for just $10,750. The only issue seems to be the interior, but the sale included new seat covers, so that's no problem at all. Of course, most people would probably want a bigger engine in their muscle car, and 2nd gen Barracudas can deliver on that within a budget. Hagerty values a 1968 with a 318 Sci V8 between $11,300 for a beater and $37,200 for a cherry ride, while JD Power says the high retail price is only $25,700. Getting a 440 under the hood is going to be a little more expensive, but with a little legwork, it's possible to find one in good shape for under $35,000. The Mercury Cougar was the cousin car of the Ford Mustang, which doesn't get nearly enough respect. A 1968 Cougar is every bit as cool as 1968's Stang and brings as much wow factor at a red light, but is much more wallet friendly. For the low price of $17,500, one lucky bidder on BAT got a completely restored 1968 Cougar with a 302 CI V8. The exterior color was changed as well as the interior, but the car appears to be matching numbers, which is pretty awesome. That's a price that really can't be beaten, but even so, late 1960s Cougars are good value. Classic.com noted one that sold for $165,000, but that was a 1 of 357 GTE 427 in concourse condition. Generally speaking, 1968 Cougars can be had in great shape, with V8s in the low to mid $20,000 range, making them one of the best deals in classic muscle cars. As an added bonus, because it looks kind of like a Mustang, but not exactly, people are going to be in awe and constantly ask questions. The point of this list is to bring some surprisingly affordable classic muscle cars that are sure to turn heads, and nothing achieves that more than this 1970 Plymouth Duster drag car that sold for $18,750 in August 2024. It's a real race car that operated in the 1970s and was completely restored, including a rebuilt 440 CI engine. Granted, it's not street legal, but it could certainly be converted, and it would be the most head-turning daily driver of all time. Not everyone wants a dragster, but the Plymouth Duster in factory condition is definitely a desirable classic muscle car. It's easily the most obtainable Mopar and is only a half a click less cool than a Roadrunner or Barracuda. JD Power sets the average retail price of a 1970 Duster with a 340 CI V8 at $20,300, which is a killer deal for a muscle classic. Even the top prices for rare variants aren't ridiculous, making the Plymouth Duster the king of budget muscle cars. Unfortunately, the Dukes of Hazzard and the Fast and Furious franchise, as well as numerous other movies, have radically depleted the supply of second-gen 1968-1970 Dodge Chargers, and the ones that remain are for serious collectors with deep pockets only. For those on a budget who need a Charger fix, the third generation is a viable option. Most years should be avoided because they had detuned engines and weird styling cues like opera windows and wire spoke rims, but 1971 was still pretty kick-ass. A killer 1971 Charger SE sold for $22,000 on BAT a few years ago, and it was in immaculate shape, on top of which it's a matching numbers car with a 383 Ci Magnum V8, which isn't quite as powerful as a 440 or 426, but is still good for 300 horsepower. It might be tough to find a car this great for that price, but the 1971 offers an affordable path to classic Charger ownership. $30,000 is probably what should be expected for an awesome third-gen Charger, which is about what an engineless, rusted-frame second-gen project car goes for. Not a lot of readers probably expected to find a 1970 Pontiac Firebird with a 400 Ci V8 on a list of affordable classic muscle cars, but this Esprit went for $26,500 on BAT in July 2024. There are those that may be thinking the car is a mess, but it was completely refurbished between 2018 and 2024 and is in perfect condition. The only real issues are that the 400 has a 2-barrel carb, plus it is screaming for a rear spoiler and cooler wheels, but those are easily addressed. This car is definitely an outlier because pristine early second-gen Firebirds generally go for way more. It's more probable to find a project car for under $30,000, but anyone willing to put in the time can likely find another similar deal. If something can happen once, it can happen twice. The 1971 Firebird does become more affordable if it's equipped with a 350 V8, as Hagerty sets the excellent condition value at $21,500. Even the Concours condition at $32,600 is doable, and it's still a V8 classic. A 1971 Chevrolet Chevelle is another car making a surprise appearance on a cheap classic muscle car list, but BAT has the receipts. This gorgeous 1971 Chevelle Sports Coupe sold in January 2024 for $27,150, and while it's definitely a looker, there are a few reasons why it's so cheap. It's not a matching numbers car, nor is it actually an SS. It was redone to look like an SS, and its original 6-cylinder was replaced by a 340 V8. Rolling down the street, nobody is going to know, and it really does look awesome, so it's only an issue if it was purchased as an investment. Even though Chevy made a ton of Chevelle, their abundance hasn't hurt their desirability. Along with the Charger, the Chevelle is a defining car of the classic era of muscle cars, which means everyone wants it. Hagerty offers some hope by setting the Concours condition of a 1971 with a 350 at $27,770. Then again, most people in the market for one of these killer rides want the 454 Ci, but even that isn't as bad as one would think. E-Power says the average retail price for a 1971 Chevelle with a 454 is $50,100, which might make a prospective buyer consider raising the budget ceiling. The Chevrolet Nova, like the Dodge Dart or Plymouth Duster, has often been considered a second-tier classic muscle car, but they look sharp and go fast, so they make great buys for bargain hunting enthusiasts. A completely restored 1971 Nova, including a rebuilt 396 CI-V8, went for $28,500 in January 2024. With the more compact size of the Nova, combined with the power of the 396, means the buyer didn't just get a pretty ride, but also some serious performance, which is usually the first thing sacrificed with a budget buy. In reality, Novas are among the best deals in classic muscle cars. J.D. Power lists the average retail price of 1971 two-door coupes at only $13,900, but they don't indicate what type of engine that involves. Bring a Trailer obviously has some powerful Nova steals, and Classic.com has detailed dozens of 1971 V8 auction sales in the $20,000 range. For those willing to slum it with a 307 CI V8, Haggerty says the best of the best is only $26,100, which is a great deal on a car that still has plenty of pep. This 440-powered 1970 Dodge Coronet hardtop that sold for $29,000 on BAT in January 2024 for $29,000 seems like a hoax or some AI trickery, but it is 100% legit. There are a couple of things that kept the price down, like the lack of matching numbers and the Super Beat graphics that are unsupported by the fender tag. Still, this is a clean Mopar with a 390 horsepower 440 under the hood. As with the 1971 Chevelle SS Tribute, the only way any of this matters is if the buyer bought it as an investment. In terms of enjoyment, it's hard to beat this price for a car that looks and drives so amazingly. Some of the rarest and most expensive classic Mopars are Coronets, with prices reaching into the millions. A regular 1971 Coronet, however, is a reasonably affordable ride, with Haggerty setting the value of the 318 CI V8 versions between $8,600 for a fixer-upper and just $29,600 at the top condition level. The 5th generation Coronets were made for the 440, so it's worth it to spend a couple of extra bucks getting one equipped properly. J.D. Power assesses the value of a 1970 Coronet RT between $13,200 and $49,000 and $800, which may or may not include the 440. They do list a 1970 with a 426 Hemi as going for $94,000 on average. For classic Mustang fans, there's nothing more awesome than a Boss 429, but there ain't nothing wrong with a Boss 302. Unlike the former, the latter doesn't require a second mortgage or cashing in the 401k to acquire. BAT sold a completely refurbished 1970 Ford Mustang Boss 302 for $30,000 in May 2024, and it is one of the best looking Stangs on the site. Honestly, a flaw can't be found on this ride, so it goes down as one of the best deals of the year. 1970 was the last good year for the first gen Mustang, before they got those weird looking elongated hoods, so this one is a keeper. 1971. Mustangs aren't actually all that expensive, with Haggerty valuing 302 equipped versions between $7,500 and $25,000. Once again, J.D. Power doesn't make a distinction with regard to engine size, but they say a 1971 two-door fastback has an average retail price of $39,800. Chances are that it's the price for a 302 or 351, but definitely not a 250 CI 6. The Pontiac GTO kicked off the classic muscle car era in 1964, so it is the most consequential ride of the class. An original 389 or 455 Judge are not on the cards for a budget-conscious connoisseur, but a killer classic goat is not out of reach. This sweet Lucerne Blue 1971 GTO with a 400 CI V8 and only 6,000 miles sold on BAT for just $32,000 in 2022. It's hard to find anything wrong with this amazing car, and everything seems to be right. It's spotless, documented, and appears to be an all-original survivor car with only a drivetrain rebuild. As with all classic muscle cars, 1971 was the last great year for the GTO before detuning robbed it of its power. As hard as it is to believe, a second-gen GTO is obtainable without surrendering body parts, i.e. an arm and a leg. For the purposes of this list, it is demonstrably possible to get a great GTO and all kinds of killer classic muscle cars for less than the price of a base model 2025 Ford Mustang. A new Mustang is actually a pretty amazing ride, but it doesn't have the same groove or head-turning ability as classic American muscle. So, we have shared with you top 10 surprisingly affordable classic muscle cars that still turn heads. Hope they will be useful to you. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.